but
No, I'm not buying into it, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not.
He's not about the holiday
I'm not about the holiday. I avoided holidays like the plague because I wanted to make sure people were actually going to be there.
Coming on here, we were going to say everything's going to be more expensive. Don't do it. And it's
or
just,
the opposite.
Or the
it's
opposite.
It's going to be cheaper. Do it.
Yeah, and that's just not what we found.
No.
So you can't control anybody, let alone your 100, 150 people, 200 people that you're inviting. You can't control all of them. So as long as your mindset is strong on what it is that you want, you just have to carry that out through your whole journey.
You're thinking about getting married over a holiday weekend?
Let's talk about it.
So interesting that after doing all of our research for this, I thought that we were going to be able to come on here and be like, this is what the details, the facts are. And it is not that at all.
Definitely not.
No. I really think that we were coming on here and we were going to say, everything's going to be more expensive, don't do it. And it's
or
just,
the opposite.
Or the
it's
opposite.
It's going to be cheaper. Do it.
Yeah. And that's just not what we found.
No.
So,
I mean, I found it kind of comforting. You know, all of these weddings, all of those invites you probably get in the mail. You know, everyone wants to get married on peak season. And then you get one of those like sprinkled in winter weddings. And so naturally you assume, oh, that's going to be cheaper. Right? So when you as a couple are trying to decide based on like kind of callback in our last episode, when should I get married? You know, you might naturally think, oh, let's get married in December. It totally might be cheaper. And like what Sarah was saying in our research, sometimes that's true and other times that is not true whatsoever. Which is why we kind of think this is almost like a controversial topic. You do you, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna get a cheaper thing, right? Or you're gonna get this secret deal that like, oh, I have a secret that no one else is gonna know about because I decided to get married during off season. You know, if that makes sense. And we talk about availability for vendors too, right? So if you're looking at your day or you're looking at the time, you know, around, I'm gonna use Christmas because that's just that's one of a bigger holiday whether you celebrate or not. You know, you look at Christmas. Guess what? Your photographer probably also celebrates Christmas too, right? Or your videographer also celebrates Christmas, so you kind of have to navigate that as well.
Yeah, you don't know what the availability of venues are going to be, because I think what you'll see, like what we were seeing, is some venues, if they are high in want and need from clients, their pricing is higher.
Yeah.
And if you are in the middle of rural PA, wanting to get married in December, it probably will be cheaper because technically that's off season for us, and if they'll take what they can get during an off season wedding. So I think what was so interesting for us was seeing every vendor and every venue handles all of that differently. Yeah. Which I truly thought it was going to be like, oh, holiday, we're skyrocketing the prices.
Cookie cutter response.
Yeah. And it wasn't, which is so interesting. So I actually did get married over a holiday weekend in Florida. And the reason why I did that, this was way before the niche of like a 4-day wedding festivity weekend was a thing. And so I was like, if people are going to be traveling to Florida, it needs to be over a holiday weekend so people can come and they have off Monday, and that's, you know, if they want to extend it to Tuesday, like they're able to make a mini vacation about it. So that was my perspective and my heart choosing that weekend. But I think something that we really want to hear in this is the response from you of whether that you were a bride or a groom or a couple that got married on a holiday weekend, what that was like for you, and then also for guests that have gone to holiday weekend weddings. I want, like, whether that be Christmas, Thanksgiving, Memorial Day, Labor Day, there's so many different holidays, but like you also have to think about the airfare. Like, okay, great, they extended this, but like, oh my gosh, because it was a holiday weekend, how much did my guests pay to get there, right? You know what I mean? So it's like,
or if it was within driving, if there's a lot of traffic from people traveling in and out of the cities, if that was a nightmare and it took people longer to get there than they anticipated, there's just a lot to think about.
Well, and even for you as a bride who did something, like, because two out of the three of us got married during holidays or planning to get married. Like, I'm not married yet, but you got married on Columbus Day, and you kind of had the pitfall of like, crap, wait, not all my guests have off on this holiday.
Yeah, I thought I was onto something here because my venue, it's a unique venue in the sense that if you want to get married on the weekend, you get the property from Thursday until Sunday. So you get like a long weekend out of it, which is amazing, but it was just not in my budget. So they had another option where you can get married on a Tuesday and you would have the property from a Monday into a Wednesday. So I'm like, okay, that works for me. That's in my budget. And then I saw that Monday was a Columbus Day Monday. So then I would have a long weekend. I'm like, ooh, I can make this like a long weekend, except they won't stay at the venue, but my house, my parents' house, whatever. We can have most of our family come for like 5 long days and it'd be great. Little did I know, after my guests were like reaching out to me, they're like, Kayla, I don't have off on Columbus Day. That's not a thing. And I'm like, really? I thought schools were closed. Like, I thought this was like a whole like big holiday, the whole 9 yards. It was not. So that's another thing to look into. I had no idea. That threw me off. But
no, I'm not buying into it, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not.
It's not about the holiday.
I'm not about the holiday. I call it narcissistic. I don't know what to do it. Like, I'm like, Christmas, if you celebrate for Jesus, that's about, you know what I mean? It's not David. It's not David. So I, like, to me, in my brain, when my fiance and I were like trying to pick a day, I avoided holidays like the plague because I wanted to make sure people were actually going to be there. Like, it gets into this like sticky situation if you do it over a major holiday, is that like, it's not like people are trying to navigate their own family plans and their own get-togethers. Now they have to add your wedding into the mix. Right. Already expensive season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's an expensive season to be in. So, like, I'm keeping going back to Christmas because I think that's, like, just, like, the hot topic. Like, a lot of people talk about, like, winter wonderland weddings.
Yeah.
And they try to do it over Christmas because a lot of these venues are decorating for Christmas. And so they're thinking, oh, great. Yeah, like, as the couple, they're getting a deal. But as a guest, that would be a logistical nightmare for me. Because if I have to now travel to this wedding, right? I have to go to this wedding. Okay, great, check. Now I have to pay them a gift, right?
Sorry, I'm laughing because I have 2 weddings in December. And so it's so interesting, which we'll get to, but it's so interesting to hear you being on the other side of it of, I would want nothing to do with holidays, and then hearing yourself from a guest perspective.
Yeah. It's almost like I've always I had this one student in high school, student peer in high school that their birthday was on Christmas, and to me I almost feel like it's like double dipping, but that someone gets shortchanged somewhere somehow. You know, like you get that like RC car, but like for your birthday present you get the batteries. You know what I mean? like I feel like that's what it is that because now as a guest I have to navigate all of those logistical stuff. And obviously, again, we talk about priorities of the couple, like I mentioned before. Like, what is your priority? If your priority is getting married during Christmas, get married during Christmas. And obviously, if you invite me as your guest, it is up to me to navigate that. And it's not up to you to be responsible. It's not up to you to be responsible for how I feel. So take what I say with a grain of salt as the guest, right? It might be a no for me. And it's okay.
Yeah. Because I'm guessing the couple probably understands that. Yeah. Hey, we know what we're choosing.
They might do that on purpose.
Yeah, you never know.
You
right.
never know.
Yeah. Like, so and how you were saying the Winter Wonderland, 2 brides that I'm working with chose December. I have them back to back. One is before Christmas, one's right after, and they've chosen their venues because they are saving money on decor besides their centerpieces. Yeah. But like, you walk in and these venues are just decked out, and don't get me wrong, beautifully. Yeah. But that was their non-negotiable. Like, I want a Winter Wonderland Christmas wedding. Yeah. But with that then does come
the logistics
and conflicts that may come with that. So I think that that's why we really wanted this to be more an interactive episode.
Yeah.
Because we want to know, like, what was it?
Worth it?
Yeah, is it worth it?
Yeah.
If you're a couple, do you have regrets? Like, I wouldn't say I have regrets, because in the time, I mean, it was almost 8 years ago, and it's funny how you bring that up. Is like, being the host, knowing that this is going to be a destination I was not going to hold a grudge to anybody that couldn't make it. I'm choosing to have my wedding not only on a holiday weekend, but out of state. Right? That was my choice, and you can't hold that against your guests and have those expectations that it's like, well, now you have to drop thousands to come to me. You know what I mean? And once again, those come back to priorities of like, you know your people, your guests, where you are going to travel to, who can come, who can't, and then that's when you make that decision. But for the most part, I just was like, this is what we're doing, and if you can make it, awesome. If you can't, okay. But
and your couple is happy. They're happy.
Yeah, they're so
thrilled,
happy.
And they're excited for it.
But it also is interesting because the guest count is smaller. Which makes sense.
Which makes sense. Which makes sense. And, you know, like, I think it's also important to take ownership of that, right? Like, when and this is just in general for weddings. It could be applied even in, if you did it in June. Take ownership of your decisions. And then go forward, because there will be people who are going to be negative Nancy's, or people who are just against that, right?
You picked that place, well, I can't come then. Oh, okay.
Right? Well, like, talk about you and your wedding. Like, you had to navigate people saying, well, I can't come to your ceremony, but maybe I could drive to your wedding.
Right,
you know
that's
what I
the
mean?
other thing, because it was a Tuesday. It was tough. Like, I had a lot of teachers in my family, and they're like, I can't make it to the ceremony because we chose a 1 o'clock ceremony. But they're like, we'll be able to come to the party if that's okay. And I'm like, hey, whatever you can make work. I chose a Tuesday. That's my fault. At the middle of the week, I'm like, let's get rowdy on a Tuesday.
Don't even say it's your fault.
No.
It's what you
your
could
decision.
do.
That was within my budget, and I
you
had
could
to
do. And so you knew, hey, some people might not be able to make the ceremony, but I know our parents and our siblings and our bridal party will be there. We're doing what we wanted, what we could afford, and you take ownership of that.
Exactly.
And I mean, it's becoming more and more weddings are expensive.
Yes.
Weekday weddings, I mean, we can even lead this into weekday weddings. Not just holiday weekends. Weekday weddings are becoming more popular because you get the same venue for a fraction of the price. So you're telling me I can save $10,000? Yes. Yes, I will get married on a Tuesday.
Cheaper because they don't have only 52 weekends in the year. They can now dip into weekday weddings. So I'll give you a
So that's true.
That.
That's right. You got a few discounts because your vendors were like, that's
not doing anything on a
us.
Tuesday. Sure, bring it in. So
well, and that's where you see like around the holiday, like you would like what we noticed when we did our research, like after Thanksgiving, like the day directly after the holiday, sometimes you did see a dip because they realize, people maybe want to get married on the holiday, but now we have an open venue because everyone's traveling. They might give you that deal. And like, again, up to you and up to your priorities, like, oh, maybe that's something we grab onto. Like, maybe that's something we like, because venues, at the end of the day, this is a business, and it's something that they need the revenue. They need you. Like, I think it's something important as wedding coordinators, always to circle back to our profession and our passion. We have an understanding that this would not happen without you guys. Literally without the client. So, like, weirdly enough, you guys, the client themselves and me planning my own wedding, we have a lot of power, right? Like, negotiating, meeting these vendors, they need us to sustain themselves. These big venues need us, and so that's why they're willing. A lot of the times, they're human too. They're sympathetic to a lot of plights. If you're communicative and tell them your expectations or your hopes, they're willing to work with you. And if they have a need to fill in that space, and you have a desire to have a winter wonderland wedding or a fall foliage wedding, why not hop on it? You know? And of course, you'll get people like me being like, oh my gosh, it's a logistical nightmare, but it is what it is. Like, same thing with, like, Kayla's wedding. I mean, I think I mentioned in the first episode, I'm a teacher by trade, so I was like, I didn't even connect because I thought, oh, Columbus Day, we have off. What people do. I'm like, no. And then it took me a while, like, as I sent the RSVP, I'm like, oh my gosh, as I texted, I was like, oh my god, Kayla! And she was like, no, people have to, I'm like, and is this something that we had to, like, a connection? Obviously, I was going to be there to celebrate you regardless, and I was going to make sure I was there, but that's something, like, it's kind of nice to know people's priorities in themselves as guests. Like, the people that will be there at your wedding are the people that need to be there. Right? The most important people. Because, and not to say anything about Uncle Joe, Uncle Pap, who is, like, living across states, who, like, that's...
Pap.
Yeah, I don't know. I was mixing, like, Peepaw and whatever across state. Not to say anything against them or whatever, like, if they can't, but, like, and who can't financially afford it. That's that's the
Yeah.
bit I'm trying to get at,
Yeah.
like about the out of state stuff. Like, it's we understand that, and that's a burden that that people shouldn't expect other people to put on.
Yeah.
Like, oh, now you have to enter like financial straits, or like to be tight on your pocketbook to come celebrate me and to give me a gift on top of that. You know, like that's a hard ask to ask people. But for you as the couple, that 80 people, 70 people, 60 people that will be there at your wedding, we're supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And
that,
okay.
like, I experienced that with a couple I mentioned in our last podcast got married in Ireland. And honestly, some people can look at that and go, you're crazy. My husband and I looked at that and said, when else are we ever going to go to Ireland? Let's make a vacation out of it. Like, this is a once in a lifetime. We would have never, just by ourselves, just where we're at with kids in our life, we would have never been like, yeah, let's just go to Ireland. It's like, so weddings could also be that opportunity for people to travel. Like, everybody, like, someone might say, oh my gosh, thank goodness this is a holiday weekend, because then we can extend it a few days without having to actually take off more than one day because, you know, we already have off. So I think it's very interesting.
And everyone just views the whole situation so differently. And you can't control anybody, let alone your 100, 150 people, 200 people that you're inviting. You can't control all of them. So as long as your mindset is strong on what it is that you want, you just have to carry that out through your whole journey and keep that in mind, and just know that you're doing it for yourselves. You, the couple, wants this dream to happen for your wedding. So don't let it hurt your heart. Don't take it don't take it personally. Just have in your head that everybody has their own journey and their own thing going on in their life. So sometimes it's difficult for some. Others, it may be a dream for them to attend your wedding if it's a long distance away, or whatever the case may be. Just do what you want to do as a couple. I think at the end of the day, it's like all you can say in this situation.
And the reason why we wanted to talk about holiday weddings in particular is because people are naturally going to have strong reactions,
right?
Because it is a holiday,
right? Yeah.
Like even for like a Columbus Day or Memorial Day,
day of, right?
Yeah.
Not Christmas Day, but I mean
the season.
The season.
Well, because now I'm like, well, normally we go to the lake for Memorial Day weekend, but now she has her, like, even like,
people
you know
traditions.
what I mean? Yeah, and so like that's why we wanted it to kind of go off, to kind of create like a flow with our last episode about talking about. I use the word priorities a lot this episode because I think it's so important when you talk about when you decide to get married, because you're going to have to deal with those tough conversations regardless of who it is, and that's extremely important. Extremely important.
So I think wrapping this all up,
we
want to know, I know we've said it a few times, but we're excited to hear your opinions about this topic.
Let it rip.
Let it rip.
Let us read the comments.
Yes.
Thoughts, opinions of not only the couple if they're choosing a holiday wedding, but the guests. How did you feel during it?
Experience. If you're a vendor, how do you feel about people getting inquiries over Christmas, Thanksgiving, major holidays, and how you kind of navigate that?
I want to know if, like, are you a vendor where it's like, well, it's my job, of course I'll take whatever, or are you like, no, these are my boundaries, I will not work for these one. Like, we would just love to know, because it's scattered throughout. Everybody's different, and so we're excited for the interaction.
Yeah, let's hear it. So that's the end of this episode. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we're going to be talking about all things coordination.
Yep.
Let's hear it.
Bye.